The woman at table 7 didn't even wait for him to sit down properly. She took one look at the sling across his arm, the way his right hand rested against his chest like something fragile and borrowed, and she picked up her purse from the back of her chair. Not quickly, not with any drama. Just the slow, deliberate movement of someone who has already made a decision and is simply executing it. "I'm sorry," she said, though her voice made it clear she wasn't. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," and then she walked out. The entire dining room of the Finch, one of the most quietly expensive restaurants in downtown Victoria, British Columbia, had the grace to pretend they hadn't seen, except that everyone had. Every single person with a glass of Okanagan Pinot in their hand had watched Meredith Calder stand up from the best table in the restaurant and leave a man sitting alone at it, holding a menu he hadn't opened yet, with a smile fading so slowly it was almost worse than if it had collapsed all at once. The hostess moved toward the table. Someone at the bar found something important to look at on their phone, and Lowen Calloway, busser and part-time bread delivery specialist for the Finch, stood frozen in the corridor between the kitchen and the floor, a basket of sourdough in her hands and absolutely no idea what to do with it. She was 28 years old. She had been working at the Finch for 4 months. She had a bachelor's degree in English literature from the University of Victoria, a student loan she did not like thinking about, and a very strict personal rule about not making scenes at work. She broke the rule. Not loudly. Not with any kind of speech. She just walked over to table 7 with her bread basket, set it down in front of the man sitting alone, and said, "The sourdough is actually really good tonight. They burned the first batch and the second one always comes out better. I don't know why that is." The man looked at her. He was perhaps 40, maybe a few years younger. It was hard to tell with people who held themselves a certain way. His left hand was wrapped around a glass of water. His right arm was in the sling. He had the kind of face that suggested he was used to rooms going quiet around him, though perhaps not quite like this. He said, "Is that so?" "It is," Lowen said. "Also, the halibut special is excellent and the pasta is a trap." Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile. But the other thing, the thing before a smile that most people never see because they're not looking at the right moment. "A trap how?" he said. "They undercook the linguine by about 90 seconds. It's been happening for 3 weeks and no one upstairs will listen to me about it. You've been tracking it." "I've been eating the leftovers," Lowen said. "There's a difference." She straightened up. "I'll send your server over. Her name's Amanda and she's having a better night than it looks like she's having." She went back to the kitchen. She did not think about him again for the rest of her shift. That was what she told herself. She was mostly successful. His name, she found out later, not from him but from the internet, the way you find out things about people you're not supposed to be curious about, was Stellan Vaux, 41, Vancouver Island born. He had built a logistics software company in his late 20s, sold it for a number that made financial journalists write full paragraphs in the passive voice, and then quietly started 3 more companies, 2 of which had been acquired and one of which was, at the time of the restaurant incident, in the process of going public on the TSX. The sling was from a motorcycle accident in the Cowichan Valley 6 weeks prior. He had walked away from it. His passenger had not been with him. He'd been riding alone, which was unusual, and the reasons for that were not something the internet felt it necessary to explain. The blind date, the woman who left, had been arranged by a mutual friend. Her name was Meredith Calder. She was 35, beautiful, and worked in arts administration. She had told the mutual friend, afterward, that she simply hadn't been prepared for. And here the friend telling the story to someone else, who told someone else, who somehow eventually told a barista at a coffee shop near the Finch, where the kitchen staff sometimes went on breaks, that she simply hadn't been prepared for something like that. Something like that. Lowen heard this secondhand, standing in line for an Americano at 7:40 in the morning, and she felt a sensation in her chest she could only describe as a hot coal, small and specific and not going anywhere fast. He came back to the Finch the following Thursday. The sling was gone. His right arm moved normally, though he favored it slightly. The way you favor something that has hurt you recently enough that the memory is still in the muscle. He was seated at a different table this time, not the best one, and he was alone, and he was reading something on his phone with the expression of a man who is reading something he would rather not be reading. Lowen was bussing the adjacent table. She was very focused on that table. "The halibut," he said without looking up from his phone. She stopped. "Is it still good?" he said. "Or has it also become a trap?" "Still good," she said. "They got a new supplier in Sook. You can taste the difference." He looked up then. "You really do track these things. Someone has to." He put his phone face down on the table. That was the moment she noticed. He put it face down, which meant he was done with it, which meant she now had his full attention, which was, she discovered, a slightly alarming amount of attention to suddenly have from a person like Stellan Vaux. "I never thanked you," he said. "For the bread." "You don't have to thank someone for bread," Lowen said. "It's bread, for the company then." She did not know what to say to that. She was 28 years old and she was holding a pile of dirty linen, and she had, apparently, been someone's company during one of the worst moments of his recent social life, and the correct response to that was not immediately obvious. "The pasta's been fixed, by the way," she said. "They're cooking it properly now." "Did they listen to you?" "They listened to the chef de cuisine who had the same complaint 3 days after me and said it louder." He laughed. It was unexpected. She hadn't been trying to be funny, exactly, and yet there it was, a real laugh, not the kind people perform in restaurants, but the kind that happens before you've had time to decide whether to have it. "I'm Stellan," he said. "I know," she said, and then immediately regretted it, because it sounded like she'd been looking him up, which she had been, but she hadn't meant to admit that. He looked at her with an expression she would spend some time thinking about afterward. "Lowen," she said, before he could ask. "Lowen Calloway, that's an unusual name. My mother was from Cape Breton. She had opinions." "Good opinions," he said. She went back to bussing the table. He left her a note that night. Not a phone number, just a note, written on the back of his receipt, which Amanda brought to the back with slightly raised eyebrows and said nothing about, because Amanda was a professional. The note said, "The halibut was excellent. You were right about the supplier." That was all. Lowen folded it in half and put it in her jacket pocket and told herself it didn't mean anything. It meant something. The third time he came in, he asked if she would like to have coffee with him. Not dinner. Coffee, which she understood to be a gesture of consideration. Dinner implied a length of time that neither of them had agreed to, but coffee was manageable. Coffee was a conversation with a natural endpoint built in. She said yes. She said yes on a Tuesday afternoon, in the back corridor of the Finch, still in her work apron, with the smell of garlic on her hands from helping the prep team with something they weren't technically supposed to let her help with. And she was immediately aware of how that looked. Her in an apron, smelling of garlic, saying yes to a man who had recently been in the financial section of McLean's. Stellan did not appear to notice the garlic, or if he did, it clearly didn't factor into anything. They met at a coffee shop in James Bay on a Saturday morning, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and a soundtrack of acoustic guitar that was trying very hard not to be cliché. They talked for 2 hours. She told him about the English degree and the student loan, and the novel she had started 3 years ago, and was still, technically, in the middle of writing, in the sense that she had not officially abandoned it. He told her about the logistics company, the accident, the year after the accident that had been. He paused here, in a way that she did not push on, complicated. She did not ask about Meredith Calder. He did not bring her up. The conversation moved the way good conversations move, without a map, following the terrain. He paid for the coffee. She let him, because the alternative was a whole separate conversation she didn't have the energy for at 10 in the morning. Walking out, he said, "I'd like to do this again." She said, "The coffee was good, but I know a better place." He said, "Show me." She showed him. 3 weeks of Saturday mornings, coffee places across Victoria, the one near the inner harbor that was too loud, the one in Fernwood that was too quiet, the one on Cook Street that was exactly right and became, without any formal discussion, their place. His family was from Saanich. His mother, Vivienne Vaux, was a retired school principal who now chaired the board of a local arts foundation and had, in Stellan's words, thoughts about everything and opinions about most of them. His father had died when Stellan was 19. He had a younger sister, Blythe, who was an emergency room nurse in Kelowna, and who he spoke about with the kind of easy warmth that tells you everything about how someone was raised. He did not speak about Meredith Calder. He did not speak about the year after the accident that had been complicated. Lowen did not ask. She was good at knowing which silences to sit with. She told him about her father, who had been a fisherman in Cape Breton and had died when she was 12. Her mother, who had moved them to Victoria shortly after and spent the next 15 years being quietly, determinedly fine. Her younger brother, Caelan, who was at Dalhousie studying marine biology and sending her terrible memes at irregular hours. "Your family sounds real," Stellan said one Saturday morning. She looked at him. "As opposed to." He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. The right arm still moved with that slight caution. "Some families," he said carefully, "are more like institutions. Everyone has a role. There are expectations. There's a board of directors quality to the whole thing. That sounds exhausting, Lowen said. It's efficient, he said, and she could hear in his voice that efficiency was not actually what he valued about it, but that he had decided long ago to call it that. She met Vivienne Vaux in November, 4 months into whatever this was, at a dinner Stellan had mentioned once, casually, as being at his mother's house in Saanich, and had then mentioned again, less casually, and then said outright that he would like Lowen to come, if she was comfortable with that. She wore her best dress. She arrived with a bottle of Okanagan Riesling and a lemon tart from a bakery in Cook Street Village, because her mother had raised her with the understanding that you do not arrive at someone's house empty-handed. Vivienne Vaux opened the door, looked at Lowen, looked at the lemon tart, and said, "The Finch. You work at the Finch." "I did," Lowen said. She had recently been promoted to front of house, but the context felt wrong. "I've moved to the floor now. You're a server." "I'm a server," Lowen confirmed, in a tone she hoped communicated that she was fine with this being known, because she was. Vivienne's expression was professional, practiced. The kind of expression that a woman who chaired Arts Foundation boards had developed over decades of managing rooms full of people with competing interests. She took the Riesling and the lemon tart and showed Lowen inside. Dinner was beautiful. The house was beautiful. Stellan's sister Blythe was there via video call from Kelowna, cheerful and uncomplicated, asking Lowen questions about Victoria with genuine interest, and at one point saying, "She's great, Stell. Honestly, I don't know what you were worried about." Which Stellan did not confirm or deny having worried about anything. Vivienne was gracious. She was also, with the precision of someone who had spent a career evaluating people, extremely thorough. She asked about Lowen's degree, about her plans, about her family, the Cape Breton origin, the father's death, the mother's move west. She asked all of this pleasantly, with the wine poured and the food excellent and the fireplace going in the living room, and Lowen answered each question honestly, with the calm of someone who has nothing to hide and has decided not to be ashamed of having less than the people in the room. She drove home alone afterward. She sat in her car outside her apartment building in Fairfield for 3 minutes before going inside. She was not upset. She told herself this clearly. She was, possibly, a little upset. Stellan called her the next morning. "My mother," he said, "has opinions." "I got that sense," Lowen said. "She liked you. She liked the lemon tart, Lowen." She sat down on her kitchen counter. Her apartment was small and full of books and had a view of someone else's garden, which she found she didn't mind. "She doesn't think I'm right for you," she said, which is fair enough. "She doesn't know me." "She doesn't know you yet," he said. "There's a distinction. I'm making it deliberately." She was quiet for a moment. Outside, a crow landed on the fence in the garden below and regarded the world with complete indifference. "I'm not going anywhere," Stellan said, in case that wasn't clear. "It wasn't entirely clear," she said honestly. "I'm clarifying," he said. "I'm staying. I want you to know that." She thought about the woman who had picked up her purse from the back of the chair and walked out of the Finch without drama. She thought about the expression on Stellan's face as it happened, the smile fading so slowly. She thought about the breadbasket she'd carried over without really thinking about why. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'm staying too," she said. What she did not know, what she found out later, in the way you find out things in relationships, gradually and then all at once, was that the year after the accident that had been complicated had involved a woman named Gillian Forsyth. Gillian Forsyth was not Meredith Calder. She had not walked out of a restaurant. What she had done was more quiet and in some ways worse. She had stayed for 6 months while Stellan was recovering, stayed and been present and said all the right things, and then she had told him, on a Tuesday evening in March, that she had met someone else the previous summer before the accident, and that she was in love with him, and that she was sorry, and that she hoped Stellan understood. He told Lowen this on a Friday evening in December, sitting on the floor of her apartment with his back against the couch and a cup of tea going cold beside him. He told her plainly, without drama, in the way he had of communicating information as if it were simply information and not also the explanation for a dozen things she had wondered about over the past months. She sat beside him on the floor, their shoulders touched. The Crow's family was loud outside even at this hour. "That's a terrible thing to have had happen," she said. "It was," he agreed. "Is that why the blind date, the attempt to—" "Try again," he said. "Yes, it was, and that went well." She laughed despite herself. "It went spectacularly. In retrospect," he said, "I think it was the best possible outcome." She looked at him. "If she hadn't left," he said, "you wouldn't have come over with the bread." She leaned her head against his shoulder. He rested his chin on her hair. Outside, the Crows were arguing about something with complete conviction. The bread, she said. The bread, he confirmed. I think about the bread a lot. Vivian Vaux called Lowen directly in January. Lowen was at work when the call came in during a lull between lunch and dinner service, and she almost didn't pick up because she didn't recognize the number. She almost didn't. She picked up. I'd like to take you for lunch, Vivian said, without preamble, which was apparently a family characteristic. Just the two of us. If you're willing, I'm willing, Lowen said. They met at a restaurant in Oak Bay. Not the Finch, a different one, which Lowen appreciated. Vivian arrived first and was already seated, which Lowen also appreciated because it meant she was taking this seriously. Vivian Vaux, in a one-on-one lunch without her son's presence as mediating factor, was different, still precise. Still the board chairman quality. But there was something underneath it that Lowen hadn't been able to see at the dinner, something that looked, after a few minutes, like grief. My son has had a difficult few years, Vivian said. I know, Lowen said. He told me. Something shifted in Vivian's expression. He told you, yes. All of it? I think so. Vivian looked at her water glass. He doesn't tell people things easily. No, Lowen agreed. He doesn't. Vivian looked up. You haven't tried to change that. Lowen was quiet for a moment. Why would I? That was, it seemed, the right answer, though she hadn't been trying to give a right answer. She had just been answering honestly. Vivian's expression did something complicated that ended somewhere in the vicinity of respect. I was not kind to you, Vivian said. At dinner, you were polite. I was assessing you. There's a difference. Yes, Lowen said. There is. I was wrong to do it the way I did it. Vivian said this with the directness of someone who does not offer apologies often but means them completely when she does. I was protecting him. That's not an excuse. It's an explanation. I understand protecting people, Lowen said. Vivian picked up her menu. After a moment she said, Do you know what you'd like? I'll have whatever you're having, Lowen said. I trust your judgment on restaurants. Vivian made a sound that was, unmistakably, a laugh. Things were good. Then things were complicated, as they always are, because this is not a story about things staying simple. The complication was a man named Driscoll Farr. He was the general manager of a restaurant group that had recently acquired the Finch, and he had, over the course of February and March, made it clear to Lowen in progressive and escalating ways that he found her interesting in a way she did not find welcome. She had said no. She had said no again, more clearly, and then a third time in writing, in a text message she saved because her mother had raised her to document things. In April, he called her into a meeting and told her that she was being let go due to performance issues, and that they would be providing a reference consistent with her tenure, and that he was sure she understood. She understood. She understood exactly. She did not cry in the meeting. She got her things. She thanked the colleagues she cared about, and she went home and sat on her kitchen counter and looked at the crow's garden, and felt the specific cold weight of injustice settling in somewhere around her rib cage. She told Stellan that evening. She told him plainly, the way he had taught her to tell things, just the facts, in order. His face while she spoke was very still in the way it went still when he was deciding something. His name, he said. No, she said. Lowen? No, I'm not doing it that way. He looked at her. What way? Your way. She said it without anger, because she wasn't angry at him. I'm not asking you to call someone. I'm not using, she gestured at the space between them, at whatever it was that his name and his resources represented. I'm going to handle this. You don't have to do everything alone. I know, she said. But I need to do this myself. She filed a complaint with the BC Human Rights Tribunal. She did it with help. A friend from university who had gone into employment law and who met her for coffee and walked her through the process with the thoroughness of someone who takes these things seriously. It took months. It was not easy. Driscoll Farr hired lawyers. The restaurant group sent letters. There were weeks when Lowen had 3 part-time jobs and was eating a lot of pasta and not sleeping as well as she would have liked. Stellan drove her to appointments. He made dinner when she was too tired to think about food. He did not call anyone or use his name or make any moves that she hadn't asked for. When she asked him, once, if it was hard to stay out of it, he said yes, but it's your story. I don't get to write it. She remembered that sentence for a long time afterward. The settlement came through in August. The terms were confidential, but the outcome was clear enough that Driscoll Farr's name became, in the Victoria restaurant world, a name that people knew to know. She found this out from Amanda, her former colleague at the Finch, who called her on a Thursday afternoon to report it with the contained satisfaction of someone delivering excellent news they have been waiting to deliver. Also, Amanda said, 3 other women filed once yours went through. Lowen sat with that for a moment. I have to go, she said, but thank you. Tell everyone I said hello. She sat on her kitchen counter and looked at the garden. The crows were there, 3 of them now, a whole family she'd gotten to know by their behavior. The largest one had started leaving small objects on the fence occasionally, which she did not tell people about because it sounded like the kind of thing that got invented on the internet. She called Stellan. "It's done," she said. A pause. "Are you okay?" She thought about it. "Yeah," she said. "I actually am." Stellan proposed in October at the coffee shop in Cook Street Village, which was in retrospect exactly right and also exactly the kind of thing she would not have predicted, because she had expected. She realized afterward, examining her own assumptions, something grander. Something that matched what he could afford to do, which was almost anything. Instead, it was a Saturday morning, the usual table, and he slid a small box across the table in the direction of her coffee cup, and said, "I've been thinking about this for a while. I didn't want to make it a thing. But it's a thing." She opened the box. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "On my father's side, my mother wanted me to have it. She wanted you to have it." She looked up from the ring. "My mother," he said again, emphasizing it, "wanted you to have it." Lowen Calloway started crying in the Cook Street coffee shop, which she would have told you she was not going to do, and which anyone who knew her would have told you was extremely unlike her, and which Stellan responded to by taking both her hands across the table and saying nothing, just sitting there, while the acoustic guitar played something in the background and the barista pretended very professionally not to have noticed. "Yes," she said when she had her voice back. "Obviously, yes. Obviously," he agreed, and he was smiling in that way. She had first seen the moment before the smile, the thing that happens before a smile, and she was very glad she'd been looking at the right moment. The wedding was in June, at a vineyard in the Cowichan Valley, near enough to where the accident had happened that it felt like something, though neither of them said so directly. It was small. Blythe flew in from Kelowna and spent the whole morning being genuinely happy, in a way that made the room feel larger. Lowen's mother came from Victoria with a new dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, and cried through the entire ceremony with the specific grace of a woman who has learned that some things are worth crying for. Kalen, Lowen's brother, gave a toast that was funny and slightly too long and perfect. Vivian Vaux sat in the front row and did not cry because she was not a woman who cried in front of groups, but when she hugged Lowen before the ceremony she held on for a second longer than necessary, and she said quietly, so only Lowen could hear, "I want you to know I'm glad it was you." That was all. It was enough. What happened at the reception, though, was that Stellan's chief financial officer, a man named Thurston Peel, who was also his oldest friend and best man, gave his toast standing up and then sat down very suddenly and had to be helped outside by 2 of his colleagues. This was because, in the course of the toast, he had let slip that Stellan's latest company was on the verge of closing a deal that would make the TSX listing from the previous year look modest. Thurston Peel, it turned out, had also apparently just found out that his wife was expecting twins. He was, in Blythe's medical assessment, completely fine, just a lot to process. Lowen watched Stellan cross the room to where Thurston was sitting in a vineyard chair in the evening air, slightly pale, and put a hand on his friend's shoulder and say something that made Thurston laugh and shake his head. She watched this from across the patio with her mother beside her, and her mother said, "He's a good man." "He is," Lowen said. "I like his mother," her mother said, which surprised Lowen enough that she laughed. "She likes you too," Lowen said, which was true. Vivian and Lowen's mother had found each other at some point during the cocktail hour and had been in what appeared to be an excellent conversation for 40 minutes, which neither of them had reported on in any detail, and which Lowen had decided she did not need to understand in order to appreciate. The evening went long, as good evenings do. The vineyard lights came on when the sun went down. The crows were not there, but she thought about them anyway. The family of them in her Fairfield garden, leaving small things on the fence that she had collected and kept in a little dish on her kitchen windowsill. She thought about a breadbasket, about a man sitting alone at the best table in a restaurant holding a menu he hadn't opened, about the thing that happens before a smile, in the moment when you're looking and most people aren't. "Hey," Stellan said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of something sparkling and the vineyard lights catching the line of his shoulder. "Hey," she said. He handed her a glass. They stood there together in the easy way of people who have learned each other's silences as well as their words. "How are you doing?" he said. She thought about it honestly, the way she always did. "Really well," she said, "actually." He touched his glass to hers. Out in the valley, the last of the summer light was still on the hills, golden and unhurried, the kind of light that knows it has nowhere to be.